Emily Sando. Welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propagandhi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm delighted that you're here. Emily, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners out there so they know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Emily. Currently a Buffalo-based, I guess I would describe myself as like a videographer, photographer, done a little bit of everything. Currently like working in podcasting as well, and at a coffee shop. So, just doing a little bit of everything. I've been a Propagandhi fan since middle school. I'm really excited to talk about it.
Love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Before we get into that,
Mhm.
what's your work in podcasting like?
So currently I work, I am not one of the talent on the show. I help produce a podcast, so I do all of we do like live studio recording, audio and video. So I just kind of like manage audio, video quality, take notes during the show, and then a lot of what I do is editing clips for social media. So that's kind of like what my main responsibilities boil down to.
Nice. Yeah, that's a lot of the stuff that you see actually successful podcasts doing that splice out small samples here and there to drag
Yeah,
listeners in hopes that they'll check out the larger product. That is
yeah.
something that I personally have failed to do in the last 5 years on this show, probably to my own detriment. So I
I mean,
kind of wish I would
yeah.
have done that a little bit more.
It's definitely not easy. Yeah, it does make a big difference, but in theory, it seems like it should be easy because it's like you're just making these short little clips. How hard could it be? But it is a lot.
Yeah, I was doing book trailers for a podcast network for a while using
hmm
Descript and just dragging in images and videos and putting like the closed caption and stuff
hmm
like that. And by the time I would be done with a 25-second clip for a video, I've been at it for an hour and a half and
Yes,
like my
yeah,
brain was just drained. And I was like, man, the amount of work that goes into all those little clips that people see online is tremendous.
yeah, for sure.
Well, let's get into music. Tell me about becoming a fan of just music in general, because you found Propagandhi pretty early. I
Yeah.
found Propagandhi pretty early as well.
Mm.
So how did that all come together?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Elmira, New York, so it's like 2.5-ish hours from Buffalo. And it's funny, like I grew up Elmira, I always say to people is kind of like an interesting combination of like urban and rural. So growing up, especially with my grandparents, like I was listening to a lot of like country western music, like old, like outlaw country type stuff and like classic rock. And then my dad, my dad was an only child, but definitely kind of like I'm sure like a rebellious
Hmm.
teenager. Um, he was very into punk and hip hop and things like that. And then by the time I was born in 98, so by the time I was a kid, spending a lot of time with my dad and my grandparents, I really grew up with like an interesting mix of exposure to music, so it's like this very wide variety, a lot of which I still like, across genres. Um, yeah, and then I was really into playing music as well. I took up viola when I was a kid, so I've been playing viola for like 15 years or something like that. So I was in band, jazz band, orchestra, I was doing theater. So music really was like encompassed a lot of aspects of my life, like in school and outside of school. Um, and then yeah, I really just in middle school when my dad really kind of started introducing me to a lot of the punk music he listened to, I was just like all on board after that. That was kind of like, yeah, the beginning of everything for me.
Do you remember what the first Propagandhi stuff you heard was?
Yeah, so my first memory, or at least my most vivid memory, was Potemkin City Limits, the song. I have these very specific memories of like driving along, um, like the highway near the mall in Elmira in my dad's green Ford Focus and listening to Potemkin City Limits and him explaining to me what it was about. And I was just like, wow, realizing that music, hearing songs for the first time that really had like a lot of very specific like meaning and imagery. So Potemkin City Limits was like the first song that I really have vivid memories of listening to. And then a lot of the stuff off Less Talk More Rock, specifically Anchorless and just a lot of stuff off that album. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Well, so you came to my attention recently, and I was shocked, utterly shocked. We live in the same city,
Yeah.
and we live in a city that Propagandhi is not a super popular band. I
Right.
think they last played here in 2012 at the Town Ballroom. Did you
Okay,
happen to
yeah.
go to that?
No, no, I living in Buffalo is more of a recent like last 4 or 5 years for me. So yeah, I didn't end up seeing them live until like 2022, I think, for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can't. I saw you because all these pictures started popping up during their recent Ontario tour dates
Hmm.
in September of 2025. And then I was like sharing a ton of these pictures as they were coming through because people send me stuff and I get tagged in some stuff once in a while. And then I wound up clicking on the photographer profile. And it's like Buffalo-based photographer, and all the photographs were so good, and I was sharing them like left and right, and I was like, holy cow, a Buffalo person. So
Yeah.
it's like me, my friend Bob, my friend Jeff, you, my friends Tom and Kim. So it's like I'm trying to find the Propagandhi people
Right.
in Buffalo. And then there's like Zach from Del Paxton's a huge fan, Mark
Mhm.
from Holdout's a huge fan, Mike from Hotel Etiquette is a huge fan. So there's like this little group of people in Buffalo that love Propagandhi.
Yeah.
But I would love to know a little bit about your recent photo pass experience of doing the shows in Southern Ontario. Give me a little recap of that experience for you.
Yeah, yeah. So it sort of initially started with my boyfriend and I saw them at Redbridge Fest in Quebec,
Mm,
because his family is from up around there, and I was like, wow, we should go to this and then we could go see your family, be perfect. So that was kind of like, as far as this year goes, the first time I saw them, and I really started thinking about like, man, people go to these shows, people take pictures, and I had started taking pictures for some of my friends' bands in Buffalo just for my own, fun and experience and practice. And it feels funny to like think of myself as a photographer, so I've been having to convince myself like I take pictures, that makes me a photographer. So I started taking pictures of my friends' bands, and every time I was doing it, I felt like I was getting a little bit better. So after Redbridge Fest, when they had announced more of like the Eastern Canada tour dates. And I've the thing that I've learned through all this experience is you can get really far by asking for things very nicely.
100%. I
Asking
totally
for
agree.
things nicely. Yeah, and like respecting people's time. And I'm sure, as you know, like Propagandhi are very involved with like speaking to their fans and stuff. So I had kind of like chatted with Todd on Instagram back when I saw them in 2022. So I had kind of like a little bit of back and forth of like, hey, thanks for coming to the show, stuff like that. Um, and seeing all of the photographers' work that they would share after each show. And I was like, what's the harm in like reaching out and just asking, not even for a photo pass, but just like, hey, what is kind of the process that people go through to get photo passes with you guys? So I reached out, I asked, and Todd was like, yeah, we just kind of give them out for people that ask. And I was like, oh, perfect. Can I have one? So yeah, so we talked a little bit. I had bought tickets when they went on sale to the London show and both of the Toronto shows. I'm like very fortunate to have a really flexible job. So I was like, I'll just take a few days off, go see them. So we talked a little bit and he was like, yeah, I'd probably recommend getting a photo pass for the London show because he assumed that there would be like fewer photographers there and I would have less people to compete with. Um, so yeah, and then it was just like a months of waiting game of waiting for the shows to actually happen and still just going to shows. Especially like my friends play at Milky's a lot. They play at Rec Room a lot, so I was just going to those places as much as I could and practicing. And I just constantly have this thought of like how many people can say that the first photo pass they've ever received is for their favorite band of all time. And
So
that's
sweet.
probably going to end up being I was like, there's potential that this could be a bad thing for me because am I like way out of my depth here? I have no idea what I'm doing.
I'm peaking
But
too soon.
right, exactly. And how do I ever, go beyond that? But um, at the end of the day, I was like, no one's paying me to do this. There's no expectation from anyone on me except for myself. So I'm just gonna go have fun. The London show was incredible. I had never been to that venue before.
It sounds great, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, and I really like the layout of it. And it's funny, there was actually and a lot of what I've read online, people kind of reflect this sentiment of like every venue is different, every band is different about how they do photo passes. So there's not really one way that this works this way every time. It really is like dependent on the band, the promoter, the venue. So with talking to Todd, and he was just like, yeah, reach out a week before the show. We'll make sure everything is set up, and then I did that, and then everything was good to go. It's funny, I got to the venue, and I was going to these shows by myself, so I didn't have like a backup person to kind of. So I get to the venue in London, and I go up, the girls who were working there were so nice, and I'm telling them my name, and they're like they're looking at this list, and I can see that my name is not on this list, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like this cannot be happening. And so again, they were very nice. They were like, we believe you, by the way. We don't think you're lying. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a crazy person. So I can see that my name's not on this list. So they're like, yeah, you'll probably just have to reach back out to the band and like have them send someone up to the front and let us know that you're supposed to be on this list. And I was like, well, they're about to perform in like an hour. So what are the odds that they're looking at their Instagram?
Yeah.
Eventually it all worked. Like they had their manager text someone to talk to someone else, and like it all worked out. It was amazing. Everyone was so nice and so helpful. And I was like, they did let me take my camera in, since I had tickets and just like not be in front of the barrier. But then like I got my photo pass. By the time Propagandhi went on, I was in the front, and it was so surreal. It went by so quickly. And I'm just kind of trying to like follow the photographer's leads, like what everyone else is kind of doing. There were tons of camera people there actually. And then I think also what a lot of people may not know, and I didn't really know until I kind of started getting into this, was that a lot of bands and venues, you're restricted to taking photos just for the first three songs of a set.
Mm.
And I think there's different reasons for that I've read. Part of it is just like crowd enjoyment. You don't want photographers like blocking the crowd like the whole time during the show. So you kind of get the first three songs. And then after that, like I just kind of stood off to the side, and people were still taking pictures, and no one seemed to have a problem with that. So, I just kind of stayed out of the way and got as many pictures as I could, and it was just so amazing. And it's funny because, again, a lot of people when they photograph bands, it's probably a band that they know, but maybe not extremely well. And the recommendation is usually like, oh, look up their set list, listen to some of their songs ahead of time so you know what to expect. And I was like,
Yeah.
from the first note of whatever song they play, I'm gonna know exactly what's what's
Yeah.
happening during each song. So that definitely helped, knowing like this song sounds like this and this happens at this part. And so it was great. It was so uh I don't even, it's hard to put into words. It was so exciting. And there's also kind of the when you're photographing events or concerts or whatever, like you cannot look at your pictures on your camera screen because you will think that they are the worst photos anyone has ever taken. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like really just like leave them alone, look at them when you get back to the hotel room later, and then kind of assess. And yeah, I was really happy with, and I took hundreds of photos, and out of the hundreds of photos you take, you maybe get a couple dozen that you feel like are worth putting a lot of effort into editing and posting, but that's just kind of, the name of the game. But yeah, it was
Nice.
great.
So I have an idea that we
Yeah.
should collaborate on because my friend Paul and I are working on making a zine with some other interviews that we've done
Yeah.
on the podcast over the years. So we should snag some of your pictures for the zine.
Yeah, I would love
Um,
that. That'd be great.
so maybe we can work on using some of those unreleased photos for something else
Yeah,
in
because
a
there's definitely a lot. Yeah, definitely. For
very
sure.
cool. Okay, so what did you think of the Toronto shows? Did you photograph the Toronto shows too, or was it
Yeah,
just London?
so that was kind of my I had tickets to both of the Toronto shows. I had been to that venue one other time before, so it was a little more like I knew kind of the layout there. So the first night in Toronto, I had told myself I was like I'm not going to take my camera, just going to go and not have, feel like I need to worry about any of that stuff. I didn't have photo passes for those shows. It was just kind of, I was gonna go. So the first night, didn't take my camera, got up right up front at the barrier and just had a blast. The people I was standing near were so nice. Um, and so I was like, I'll just kind of scope out the layout and see if other people are bringing cameras and kind of, see how I might feel about taking my camera the next day. Um, so that's exactly what I did. On the second day I was in Toronto, I walked around all day just taking pictures. I was like, I'll just take my camera to the venue. And again, asking very nicely. So I got to the venue, I had a couple lenses with me, and Sometimes the security guards at venues will know what a camera policy is, sometimes they don't. So I asked those guys, they sent me inside to like that front desk area of the concert hall. And I was like, hey, I was wondering what your guys' camera policy is. I've got a couple different lenses. I know I had like a huge lens with me, which was not necessary because the concert hall is like pretty small and intimate. But I was like, I was just curious, what your camera policy is. Like, would this be okay? And again, the guy was so nice and he called his boss for me to ask like, "Hey, I have someone here who wants to bring a camera." And he put me on the phone with her and I was like describing what lenses I had and she was like, "Yeah, the biggest lens you have might be a little too big for what we sort of prefer." And I was like, "That's totally fine." I took it back to my car. I just came in with like my two smaller lenses and yeah, I was just standing like front row at the barrier with my camera and I was like, "Look, if something happens to my camera, that's on me. If something happens to my lenses, that's on me." And I'm willing to take that risk. And I mean, I think that I love the photos I got in London, but the stage there's pretty high from
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the pit perspective. Whereas at the concert hall, I mean, it's just you're like level with the band. And the lighting at the concert hall was a little bit better, at least as far as like photography goes. So I mean, the pictures I got in Toronto, I thought were even a little bit better than what I had gotten in London. And also probably just like having taken photos for like 4 days in a row, I was probably kind of getting into a little bit of a groove. But it was so fun and also being able to photograph Cross Dog and man, now I feel bad. I can't. Who was the other opener that night?
Wax mannequin, right?
Wax Mannequin, okay, because
Yeah.
OBGM's was the night before
Yeah.
that. And yeah. So also getting to photograph Wax Mannequin and Cross Dog was amazing. I got really good pictures of Cross Dog. I have some of Wax Mannequin, I just haven't posted them. But yeah, I mean it was great. Like everyone at the venue was so nice and there were a couple moments of like, oh man, my other lens in my fanny pack is getting crushed against this barrier right now, but everything ended up being okay. No damage. So yeah, I just couldn't believe how well everything worked out. Like
I,
nothing went wrong at any point. It was crazy.
I know the Cross Dog members are huge fans of the band.
hmm
Were you able to get in touch with them at all to share any of your work with them?
Yeah, so I did. They shared some of the stuff I had posted on Instagram, and I had also talked to Tracy after the show while she was at the merch table, and we were just kind of talking one on one about them being able to open for Propagandhi, and also me kind of expressing like, obviously we're from the US, and I was like, it makes me happy to know that people like you guys care about what is happening here and that like everybody seems to care still. So I did kind of talk with her one on one after the show, and then we had talked a little on Instagram when I shared their pictures and stuff. But yeah, they were great. They were really fun to photograph and talk to. They were nice.
Wonderful. Well, it was so nice to put two and two together that you were here because then right after that show, I was doing a little live event in Buffalo at Amy's place for the book release,
Mhm.
and I was delighted that you came out. So, what did you think of my very random book release event that I
Yeah,
did here in Buffalo?
I loved that. And it was actually my first time at Amy's place, which is crazy living in Buffalo for years as like a music person that I hadn't made it to Amy's place. So it was like a great kind of first. I loved it how it was kind of framed as like a an opener for a band, but we're gonna do like a little book talk and
Yeah.
just having like the projector in the back with like the old shows playing. Um, I thought it was super fun. I wish that like stuff like that happened more, that like there was more crossover between like music and literature and kind of other art forms at the same time. And yeah, it was the same day as music is art, so it was like, man, there's really a lot like I'm like bouncing around between a lot of like art forms today, but it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a lot of choice that weekend in Buffalo. It was a little busy, and I regretted it too because I couldn't actually stay for the rest of the show because I had three kids at home that I
Right.
had to
Yeah.
get back and be a dad for.
Yeah.
So I had to come down here, do the little book thing, and then I had to hustle and get home
Yeah.
because Del Paxton is my favorite local band, and
Mhm.
so I love seeing them anytime I can. But I had to ditch that night and it felt really bad, but I really did enjoy that aspect of crossing over like the literary world and the music world, like where
Yeah.
those things intersect. So I'm glad that you dug the random formula that we were going for that night because that's exactly what I was trying to do is like I want to open for my favorite local band.
Yeah. Yeah. It was super fun. Yeah. I liked it a lot. I stayed for a little while. I think I had to work early the next day or something, but um, yeah, I did stay for the next performer. But yeah, it was really fun.
Well, we'll catch Del Paxton again sometime in the future because they have arguably the best drummer in town playing for them. So
Cool.
we'll check that out. But for Propagandhi, a
Mhm.
couple things. What is your favorite album?
Um, Supporting cast
Okay, me
for
too.
sure. Yeah,
Yep.
that's which I'm sure as the discussion goes on, that will become apparent. Definitely supporting cast for sure. It just has the most number of songs that I remember listening to a lot, like with my dad, and also just that I still gravitate to now for sure.
Is it his favorite Propagandhi record?
That is a good question. So I don't know actually. And the thing, like, I always feel weird bringing this up because I feel like it makes other people feel weird. My father has passed away.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry
that's
to hear
part of
that.
what, no, 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 yeah, and that's okay. It is like definitely plays a role in like how I feel about all of this. And it's funny, like it came up at one of the Toronto shows, and these guys were like, because I had a How to Clean Everything shirt on that was one of the older style shirts, and they were like, oh my God, like that's the shirt from the 90s. Like, how do you have that? And I was like, oh, it was my dad's. And it came up, and they were like horrified that they had asked. And I was like, no, 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 don't feel bad. Like, I love talking about him. I love talking about Propagandhi and like so I would say maybe that or Less Talk More Rock, just because that was probably like his first kind of real dive into their stuff, I think.
Do you know what year he was born off the top of your head?
76, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
76. So
yeah.
I was born in 83.
Yeah.
So he would have been like just the generation of punk rockers
Right,
right before
exactly.
me.
Yeah, exactly.
So he was in 76. I mean, he would be 18 right in that 94 punk
Right, yeah.
explosion.
Which I mean, like, I'm jealous of if, not to be like, I wish I lived in a different generation, but really, I mean, like, to experience kind of that like explosion of that era of punk music must have been awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I probably would be like if I was asking him like how did you find Propaganda, he would probably be like, "Oh, the first Fat Records compilation. I got
Yes.
it for
Yeah.
free at some event somewhere." So that's
Right. I'm
probably what he
sure.
would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, cool. Let's chat about some of your favorite songs. You already
Yeah.
talked about Potemkin City Limits.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anything more that you would like to say specifically about Potemkin, or are you ready to surprise me with your second and third selections?
I guess as far as like Potemkin City Limits goes, like it really, yeah, after that, I was like, I don't eat meat anymore. Like, I don't like that really like was such a huge shift in my thinking as like I mean, I stopped eating meat in like seventh grade.
Mm.
Luckily, my dad and my family were like really understanding, but I just remembered that was like a huge, again, just like the imagery and knowing the backstory of that song. And yeah, it really was like a big shift for me in my life. Yeah. Um, and then as far as like next, I had a really hard time, as I'm sure
Yeah,
most
well,
people
this is a
do.
hard question. What are your
Yeah,
top
it's
three
so
Propaganda
tough.
songs? It's
Um,
impossible.
and I was almost like, man, I can't just pick three songs off of supporting cast, but I was like, but if that's the real, like, if those are the real answers, then
Hey, if that's the
yeah.
answers, I mean, my number one is supporting cast the
Yeah.
song
Yes.
ever.
Which is just like I listen to that song a lot, and especially, that guitar riff breakdown, especially like you have headphones on. And I'm like, I wish I could go back to hearing that for the first time because it really is just insane. But I think like song number two for me is probably This Is Your Life.
Hmm.
I really have always gravitated a lot towards the Todd songs, and my dad did too. Like he was a big um, Todd Kowalski proponent. I really like a lot of the Todd songs. It's obviously tough to pick between that and Night Letters, with that being kind of like the iconic one that they always play. But as far as like now, like the messaging behind This Is Your Life, and like that's probably song number two for me, I think. Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that is a really important song for me as well. And Todd's commentary on the podcast about that particular song,
Mhm,
he and his brother came on the podcast together on our
mhm.
Dark Matters episode, and they talked a lot about This Is Your Life uh, in a really amazing way because of their own personal family history surrounding that song.
Right.
And then when Chris and Todd and Jord made a This Is Your Life episode together on Chris's Patreon, I mean, it's essential listening
Yeah.
for anybody that wants to like understand Todd's songwriting. That Patreon episode that they did is so good. So I love seeing this outside the box choice come through from you because not too many people that have been on the podcast bring that song up, but it's
Yeah.
a really important one. And for me, it was a big one because I remember I was recording that episode at my parents' house while I was going through a divorce,
Hmm.
like the second day after like we decided we're going to get divorced.
Yeah.
I was recording that episode for the podcast. So that one like really stands out to me because I was going through like such a massive life shift, so much like the characters in the song. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Massive life shifts and how those things linger with you for years. It's pretty
Hmm.
wild. It's a very profound and deep song that I'm glad that you brought up.
Yeah, I love that song. And especially growing up, like I said, Elmira, like being what it is, and some of my family members falling like more on the conservative side, and just kind of having this song that sort of, gets at the root of like why so many people live this like miserable way that they do and are so convinced that like things that they're upset about things that's not, you know,
Yeah.
the reality of their situation. And like, yeah, I take a lot of like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, whenever I hear people talking about other people, the line in that song, "Go out into the world, you'll see,
Mm-hmm.
you'll probably survive."
Mm-hmm.
Mind
Yeah,
blowing
it's
because
just,
so much of it is just not real, and
yeah,
it's just fed to you to keep you angry at other
exactly.
people so that you won't change the channel because it just feeds our addictions
Yeah,
and those dopamine, receptors inside of our brains keep firing,
yeah,
but they keep firing with anger instead of pleasure.
right.
But maybe there becomes a little bit of pleasure about it because people seem to be drawn into just consuming doom. Yeah, I could go on and on about
Yes,
that
right, of
forever. Oh
course,
my
yeah.
God. Okay, cool. What is your number three?
So in my mind, like when you say number three, do you
Yeah.
mean top ranked or like
I didn't actually tell you to pick an order, did I?
no, which is fine.
That's fine. We can be the top three. The top three can be a tie. It can be like these are my three in no particular order.
Yeah, yeah. Because in my mind, like song number one for me is Without Love,
Mm,
for sure. And it's again off supporting cast. Wasn't a song that I like have really strong memories. Like I definitely, we would just listen to that album. But there was sort of like a period of, it's funny growing up with like a very like punk dad because then it's like, well, what do I have or need to rebel against? Nothing. So you kind of like when I was in middle school and I was very, it was like No Effects, Descendants, Propagandhi, and those were like the big ones. But then as I got a little older, my version of rebelling was listening to like more emo music. I
yeah.
was like, I'm just gonna listen to AFI and My Chemical Romance, which I saw
Hey,
AFI at Riverworks the other night. Great show.
yeah. I mean, you tell me what, you find fault in the Sing the Sorrow LP.
Right.
You can't
Yeah,
do it. It's a 10
exactly.
out of 10. 10 out of
Yeah.
10.
And it's just so funny that that was like my version of like rebellion. And then, you grow up a little bit. I promise this all ties back to Without Love.
Yeah.
But and I went off to college and had various boyfriends or whatever, and I sort of like fell away from listening to a lot of the music that I did when I was younger. Not for any particular reason, but it was more just like, sometimes you're in relationships and there isn't maybe as much room for the things that you're interested in, or you sort of forget about them, or I don't know. And then I ended a relationship in like early college, and I kind of like had this rediscovery of my own interest again. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I used to listen to Propagandhi like front to back, and I haven't been. And it really, so then there was kind of like the era of like growing up listening to it with my dad, and then my own kind of like rediscovery and like, okay, what are my favorite songs? And like going back through. And then by that point, obviously, they had released more music that I just wasn't even aware of as it was coming out. And then obviously, like the huge shift when my dad passed away, like it all just starts to take on new meaning for a third time. So then, yeah, Without Love, it just like, yeah, it really, I cried when they played it in Toronto. I was like, man, am I really crying up at the front right now? But I was like, I am, and that's fine. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that song really does it for me in a lot of ways.
It's perfect in every way. Like I
Hmm.
have kids, I have lost grandparents,
Yep.
I have cats. Like
Yes.
so many
Yeah.
things about that song
Yeah.
are intricately connected to my own life, and
Yeah.
it's a perfect song. I
Yeah.
mean, there's
And
no
and
doubt about it.
yeah, and like how, we can become tempted by appeals to hatred like just through, but it's still worth it to like love people and be close to people, and it will hurt. And yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and that actually ties to This Is Your Life as well, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it's about two people who are butting heads and one person's living a way that another person's not, yet there's still
Hmm.
love for the person in the basement from the person who is not in the basement in
Yes.
This Is Your Life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And that appeals to hatred line. It's so easy to grow apart from people in our lives that we see as having an ideology or a viewpoint on things that we find repulsive, but you still have all these memories that are connected to those people.
Yeah.
And when those people are no longer in your lives, you lose a little bit of your own personal history, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So it's so deep, and it has driven me absolutely to the brink of insanity the last 5 years talking about these songs. But I've learned so much about my what I actually think about the world and what I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
think about human relationships
Right.
through talking about these songs in such depth. So I completely resonate with that.
Yeah. So those are, yeah, I think that that's where I land with my podium. And it's funny, I was like, man, they really are all off supporting cast. But that's fine. I can, it's fine. Who cares? Like, I
It's
don't
my
have
favorite
to.
record too.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
really is like,
it's my favorite record ever of
yeah.
any genre of any kind of music anywhere.
Yeah, I would absolutely say the same. I
And
actually have sitting
people,
next to me I have the vinyl that they re-released. I think it's
the pink one.
the pink one. Yeah, it's
Did you
like
get the signed poster version?
thing over there. No, I just have yeah, but I got it sitting over there. And I do have like the four posters from when I saw them in 2022 in Toronto and Guelph.
Yeah,
That were like those kind of like textured like plastic. Anyway, they're cool. They're like sitting
I
over
was at those shows
there.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was great. There it
I
was
was there. I really liked the Guelph show, hometown of Razor, by the way,
Mhm.
a great Canadian metal band. The Guelph show was interesting because I was just there with some friends, and if you look at the liner notes of How to Clean Everything,
Mhm.
you'll see that a member of the band is listed as Conrad Sichler,
Mhm.
and he was their friend before they signed to Fat, who recorded like the demo tape versions
Yeah.
of some of their early How to Clean Everything songs. And Conrad was at the Guelph show.
Oh, cool.
So that was a standout memory for me is
Yeah.
that my friends Steven, Bob, Jeff, and I got to hang out with Conrad Sitzler from the liner notes of How to Clean Everything.
Yeah, that is cool. That's really like such a specific, like very specific thing to have on your
Yeah, and on those shows as well, I believe we also saw the world live debuts of Tartuffe and In Flagrante Delicto as well.
Yeah, I think so. And
So pretty
I know
sweet.
that it's funny because after the Toronto shows, I was hanging around at the merch tables and stuff, and you know, as anybody, as I feel like most Propagandhi fans know, like they are super, like they'll come down and talk to fans, whatever. So I was talking to Todd and I was like, "Yeah, I'm heading back to Buffalo tomorrow," and he was like, "You're from Buffalo?" I was like, "Yeah," and he goes, "I thought you were from Guelph." I was like, "No." And then he's like, "Well, have you met Greg? Like, how have you and Greg Soden not met?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. We've just like, never really crossed paths." But it's just so funny. Like the last time I had seen Todd, like where I was like at the merchant, we had spoken in Toronto the first time I saw them, and then in Guelph, he was kind of like, "Oh, hey, you made it." And even like years later, for him to remember that the last time we spoke was in Guelph,
Yeah.
like they really do just like all of them, they remember people and their names and their faces and things about them and the last time they saw them. And I'm like, this is just, it really is special feeling.
Yeah. I agree. Well, so Todd, if you're hearing this, Emily and I have connected, and we are putting together the Buffalo contingent to
Yep.
try to be a
We're,
big enough crowd to lure you to play Buffalo again
yep.
someday in the future.
We're finally doing it.
So Emily, just some concluding thoughts.
Mhm.
Why does this band matter to you in the scope of your life?
Yeah, so I think it's sort of twofold. There's kind of like what I think of as like the selfish reasons, I guess, is like they introduced me to a lot of ideology and like helped me examine like my own beliefs at a young age that I might not have if it weren't for them. Um, and also just it really helps with like the realization that despite everything, the quote, everything going on in the world, like there are like-minded people out there. There are people that you can connect with on your beliefs and that, you know, the world is maybe a little bit on fire. But when you're in like a room full of people that are all at a Propagandhi concert and you realize like, okay, all of these people here clearly just this sense of like community of like there are more of us that feel that like the world could or should be a certain way and that it makes and I'm not like speaking this as eloquently as I wish I were, but I'm sure you know what I mean. This kind of like camaraderie and just realization that there are people out there, the world is not as scary of a place as far as like who you might be interacting with on a day-to-day basis. Um, and just, yeah, I mean, yeah, it really is like listening to poetry. Like when you break down, like if you were to just write all these lyrics out on a piece of paper, like it's literature, it's poetry. It feels so, you know, but then like doing it through the format of music just makes it so much more, it can kind of like remain pervasive in your everyday life, I guess. Like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's the part of it is like the nostalgia for like my childhood, but then also like kind of helping to like guide making the world a better place and like how that can be achieved, I guess.
Well, something else that you might come to see in the coming years is that I think I'm like 15 years older than you or so, but
Mhm.
as you go into like your 40s and your like 30s and 40s and stuff, the songs, the way that they change and the way they speak to you changes over
Yeah.
time. And so many people on this podcast have said that they're a band that ages with me
Hmm.
and they give me, and they're about 10 years older than me. So they
Yeah.
give me a little preview of what's coming down the pipe for me
Yes. Yeah.
personally, which, whew, when it hits, it hits, you know?
Yeah.
When it hits, it
Yeah.
hits. Like I lost Cat a couple of years back, and the song, just hit me in a totally different way. So
Yeah.
anyway, but Emily, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and telling me about your fantastic photo experience. I'm really excited that we connected, and I appreciate you being here. Where can people find you if they want to follow along with your work?
Yeah.
Who are also huge Propagandhi fans?
Yeah. So my Instagram, which is where I've primarily been posting my most recent stuff, is Emily, Emily underscore Sando, Sando underscore films with an S. Since I started off as a videographer, it really used to be much more film related stuff on there. So that's my Instagram. EmilySando.com is my website. I've got a whole portfolio of photo and video stuff. There's like a lot of experimental video work on there from when I was in college that some of it's pretty neat. Yeah, those are probably the two main places. And then, I'm always just kind of bopping around Buffalo here and there.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
Well, I will. I regret that I missed that AFI show. Parenting duties were calling that night, but I'm
yeah,
glad to hear that it was
definitely
rocking.
support. Yeah, it was fun.
Um, and I'll catch you soon. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.